And we are live. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into Coach Steve's Week 2 Fantasy Recap based from the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I thank you all for tuning in once again. This was a crazy week 2 here. So if you guys caught my show last Sunday night, it's just a quick recap on basically each and every single game, a little fantasy take from every game. It's about 30 minutes long. So if you're here with me, I do very much appreciate it here. So let's get right into the action. And we're going to start with my Miami Dolphins, guys. As obviously a big Dolphins fan, I am thrilled right now. I had a very fun Sunday outside of maybe losing a few fantasy teams that I did not like. But let's start with the Baltimore Ravens side of the ball here. Obviously, Lamar Jackson was top notch, deserves that contract extension, a fantastic top tier fantasy option for the rest of the season. Should be no reason why he's not a top QB1 rest of the year, maybe even top 5 at this point. Fantastic day, 300 yards, 100 yards on the ground, and 4 total touchdowns. In terms of the run game, we're still waiting for J.K. Dobbins to come back. I mean, it's Mike Davis, 4 yards, Kenyon Drake, 8 yards. Justice Hill had the best day with 6 yards. You don't want to touch a running back for the Ravens, maybe even when J.K. Dobbins comes back, but he is the only guy that I would be considering. Onto the wide receivers. I gotta shout out to Rashad Bateman because I was definitely pretty low on Rashad Bateman, and that's my fault. It's my fault. I had him as a big sit today. Still, I thought that the Dolphins would lock him down, and he put up a big performance. Not another, but 100 yards and a touchdown once again here. He should be at this point a pretty reliable flex option for you in fantasy football. Maybe to the point, maybe even getting to a low-end wide receiver too. I want to see more targets out of him, but I don't think I'm going to say Rashad Bateman again, guys. The rest of the wide receivers, Devin Duvernay kind of came back down to earth, even though he did have a long touchdown to start the game. Again, no one else, the wide receiver position really stepped up. Demarcus Robinson had a touchdown, but that's about it. It does come down to the tight ends here. Mark Andrews, another fantastic, finally back on that top tier performance we've seen at the end of last year that we loved in him. 100 yards and a touchdown, locked in tight end 1. Now, Isaiah Likely, his backup, another 4 target game. He had 5 in this one, but he has 9 targets over 2 games now for 43 yards. In those deeper man leagues, I think Isaiah Likely is a guy that you're going to want in fantasy right now. Because I think he is going to be very involved in this offense overall. I mean, him finishing 3rd in targets this year, I don't think it's out of the questions, honestly. I think you'll be pretty happy with him there. Definitely keep your eye on this guy for a while because I think he is going to make some noises during his rookie season. Flip side of the ball, Tua Tagovailoa. Oh my God, fantastic game. 469 yards and 6 passing touchdowns. Now, is that sustainable? Probably not. But it just shows you that Miami's offense has that high scoring ability to them. I don't know if that's going to be a weekly thing. Expecting 300 yards and 2 touchdowns is more of a common denomination for a guy like Tua to throw. This was just an ordinary, I think, out of the ordinary, major big game here. Love to see it, but don't overhype what we saw in this week 2. I think you're looking more of that 303, but he's creeping up to those close to a QB1, but I wouldn't call him a QB1 at all yet. Now, the run game, it was really interesting. Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert actually out carried Chase Edmonds in this game, and it was pretty early on. I don't think Edmonds really saw the ball until late in the 3rd quarter, if anything here. Hey, Kyle, what's up? Thanks for tuning in, buddy. But we really thought Chase Edmonds would really be that guy for this team, and they went and spent money on him. He thought he would see that receiving role, but just 7 targets over the 2 games here, 17, carries. Today, he put up 43 yards. I don't know if I can even consider him an RB2 at this point. At this point, he's probably just a flexible option, but even then, I'm not really looking forward to start Chase Edmonds unless I know it's a good matchup. Raheem Mostert, like I had him as a sleeper this week, played much better, 11 for 51. But again, I don't know if he is a guy that you're going to trust on a weekly basis right now. Until someone proves it, you don't trust the Dolphins running back right now. Going over to the wide receivers, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are auto starts at this point. I mean, they combined for almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. They actually combined for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, actually. Uh, Fantastic performances. They are the clear cut weapons in this offense here. I mean, they control almost 60% of the target share over the first 2 games at this point. They're locked and loaded. No one else is even close to even competing for targets on this offense at the wide receiver position. Mike Gesicki, he had a better game, 4 for 4 and a touchdown. If someone's willing to say, oh, he's back, maybe I'd sell off on that now. I don't know if I trust Mike Gesicki enough to have him be, a weekly reliable tight end, even for how bad the position is. It wasn't until the Miami Dolphins were down in the game that he actually put up fantasy points. So can't rely on that every single week. So for me, if you can sell high on him, I absolutely would. So over the next game here, the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. So we'll start with the New York Jets first. Big comeback win here, 31-30. Joe Flacco put up a great performance, 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Again, Joe Flacco is going to do probably things like this at times until Zach Wilson, whenever that maybe comes back, isn't something that you can consistently guarantee. You're going to see the 300-yard game with 1 touchdown and a turnover, and then you're going to probably see another 300 yards, big touchdown like he did this week, and that's it. I don't know if that's going to happen again next week. I wouldn't go there. Let's see. Kyle, what'd you say here? Kyle looks like more of a backup for Miami. I guess when they pay the Bills, they might. Yeah, that might change the script there, but it's potentially there. You would think this week that he would have, saw more targets. So we were so far behind, but it just seems to be going to Tua and Waddle. But yeah, I think Kyle said it best. He looks more of a backup than a starting running back right now for the Dolphins. Over to the RBs here, things kind of balanced out to what we thought in the offseason here. Breece Hall, saw the better workload today, 7 on 50 yards. He had the touchdown, which was great for fantasy. Michael Carter kind of came back down to what we kind of projected him to be, kind of a backup guy who got like 10 to 15 touches in a game. And that's kind of what he did. He had 12 touches in this game here, 7.5 fantasy points. Nothing great, but people saying he was the heart of the offense. I don't know if that's sustainable for fantasy. For the wide receiver core, Garrett Wilson just went off on this game. Yeah, he had 8 receptions for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns, 14 targets in this game. He's got now over 2 games, 22 targets in this season so far. Way more than Corey Davis or even Elijah Moore, who I thought was going to really take a big step up here. I think I want to see it again. I'm not going to let just 2 games really dictate who is the best wide receiver. I mean, it can be really much Garrett Wilson, absolutely. But I want to see another game, see how it goes for the third game, see if that target share changes. But at this point, I don't know if I can trust Elijah Moore until he proves it on the field. Under 10 fantasy points back-to-back games. Corey Davis in deeper leagues is definitely an interesting option. He's got over 10 fantasy points in back-to-back games. Cincinnati, they didn't lock down the Cowboys. We'll get to them. And Garrett Wilson definitely should be picked up in leagues and see how that is handled here, honestly, right now. I mean, you have a big performance like that, you deserve to get picked up in fantasy and see, because there's matchups coming down that are very favorable for Garrett Wilson. So we'll go from there. Going over to the next part, the tight ends for the Jets. Tyler Conklin, I said he was going to have a pretty decent fantasy day. He did. 6 receptions for 40 yards. Again, he's a streaming tight end that you could use in certain matchups that kind of work out for you in fantasy. But that's up for the Jets here. On the Cleveland Browns side of the ball here, Jacoby Brissett, again, decent day, 18 fantasy points. He did leave at the end of the game with an ankle injury. They do play Thursday, so watch out for that. That could really change things for this Cleveland Browns offense that's already kind of not great for the passing game, but just watch out for that. Again, Jacoby Brissett isn't much of a starter. For the run game, though, Nick Chubb, big day. It wasn't on the ground per se. Well, it was on the ground, but it wasn't his rushing yards like he had in week 1. It was the 3-touchdown game that he had this week. And he actually had surprisingly more targets than Kareem Hunt in this matchup here, which was definitely a surprise because I think a lot of people expected more out of Kareem Hunt because of this matchup they had right now. But Nick Chubb, locked in starter. Now, Kareem Hunt kind of came back down to earth from his 21 fantasy points to an 8.4 fantasy point week here, but he had a lot of carries. And in a short week matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, expect Kareem Hunt to be very involved. Keep working off him. If someone is down on that performance, try to go buy low on him. He should be a solid flex option most of the season here. Amari Cooper, big fantasy day finally, 9 receptions, 100 yards, and a touchdown. Fantastic. He's a nice wide receiver, high-end wide receiver 3, boomer bust area, but he should be able to perform Hopefully he can get a couple good matchups. There are some good matchups for the Browns down the stretch here. He should be okay. Donovan Peoples-Jones fell back down to earth. No one else really stepped up for this wide receiver core. For the tight end, David Njoku, another disappointing day out of David Njoku. If you're carrying David Njoku at this point, I would just release him because I don't really think we're not seeing the work that we kind of wanted from him from, being paid this offseason here. I mean, Harrison Bryant had the better fantasy day, 3 for 45, where Njoku had 3 for 32. And if I'm thinking correctly, the snap count is probably pretty similar. I haven't seen that come out yet, but I'm sure it's very similar. So David Njoku at this point isn't a tight end that you can rely on. He could be a streaming option during bye weeks, but right now he isn't somebody you're looking to start at all at this point. So, but that is the Jets versus the Browns. Next game up, the Patriots versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Patriots handled their business, 17-14 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers here. And we'll start with the New England Patriots in fantasy this week. Mac Jones, another dud game out of him, another turnover, 200 yards, 2 and a touchdown. Not really exciting for fantasy. Probably won't be starting him unless you're in a 2 QB league. For the running game, Damian Harris led the way, 15 carries for 71 yards and a touchdown. He actually had 2 targets, which I was surprised. He actually probably has as many targets as he has through 2 games than he did through half the season or last year. So he's on a nice pace for targets. We'll see how that works out there. I know early on in this game, they were kind of going, him and Rhamondre Stevenson were kind of going back and forth in that game in terms of which carries they're planning on using here. So Damian Harris is still a nice low-end RB2 in fantasy. Should have no problem with that. Rhamondre Stevenson, I really thought he was going to see more work in this game here. Again, the game script didn't really help probably with that, but he's still a good sleeper option in fantasy, a good backup bench running back to have on your team to see if maybe at some point he does see more work in this offense. For the wide receivers, if you have Devontae Parker, just get rid of him. 4 targets over the first 2 games. I don't want anything to do with that. Jacoby Myers is someone that in PPR leagues I love to have right now. 9 for 95 in this game. He's a solid low-end wide receiver 3 with some upside in PPR leagues. He's a good hold on your team. Nelson Aguilar had the big day, 6 for 110 and a touchdown. Now, he's had 11 targets over the last 2 games here. I don't know how sustainable that really is for Nelson Aguilar. I didn't expect him to really take that kind of step in this offense here. He's probably going to be one of those waiver wire pickups this week. Probably best to let someone else deal with that and not have that headache, because I don't know if this game isn't something that we're going to consistently see in fantasy moving forward. So tight ends, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith. At this point, it's showing me that they're a pretty even split, and Jonnu Smith is actually seeing more targets in this offense. Hunter Henry is nothing I want to deal with right now. So if you have Hunter Henry, I'm getting rid of him at this point here. Drop him. Can't handle that. For the Pittsburgh side of the ball, Mitch Trubisky, another uneven performance game. Again, you're not playing him unless you're in a 2 QB league. Najee Harris, much better running and saw more targets in the offense here. Again, not a great fantasy day, especially if you draft him in the first round, but I think you still hold on to him from now. If anything, if you want to trade off him now, hopefully a performance like this might eager a fantasy owner say, oh, he had a decent day. I'll take him back. He should be fine. Might be a good time to get off of him now, because I am concerned about that foot injury overall, because Jaylen Warren, his backup, did play some more than a normal backup for Pittsburgh has over the last few years. So Najee Harris is someone I'd be okay getting off of if you could trade him after having a solid performance this week. For wide receivers is Deontay Johnson. Once again, 22 targets over the first 2 games. He is unfortunately not lock and loaded a wide receiver 2, but should be a solid flex option. He hasn't put more than 9 fantasy points in half-point PPR leagues, but he's seeing the targets. And in terms of a flexible option, you follow the target opportunity there. Chase Claypool, and George Pickens, I wish they would be more, but the way this quarterback is and Mitch Trubisky, you're just not getting that out of them. They're bench wide receivers, and it potentially could be cut candidates if you need a change in your offense. Pat Freiermuth, I'm really upset that I didn't get more Pat Freiermuth this offseason. Again, not the big 75-yard day, but 22 yards and a touchdown. You love that for a tight end. Doesn't matter how they get it. They get it by the yards or by the touchdowns. If they get you 7 fantasy points, you got to be pretty happy if you didn't draft them that high in fantasy. So Pat Freiermuth, another really solid day from him. On to the next game, the Colts versus the Jaguars. Jags won 24-0. Pretty bad here for them, but the Colts, will start with them in this game. Matt Ryan, just a terrible performance here overall. He was out without his top 2 options, so maybe you want to give him a little slack, but again, in a 1 QB league, isn't someone I can rely on right now in fantasy. Jonathan Taylor, definitely a down performance after a big week last week. He should be able to bounce back here. Again, the game script kind of went away from him. I mean, at this point, if you're losing that badly to the Jags, why overwork him and get him hurt where you can use him in other games where it can be more competitive down the road? That's the way I kind of saw it for Jonathan Taylor. But yeah, her bounce back, he'll be fine. Nyheim Hines, another decent, PPR day. Nothing great. Again, if in PPR leagues, you're okay to kind of drop him still because I'm not seeing the workload out of him. I mean, he's having 11 targets in 2 games, which is great, but he's not putting up the yardage. That's the big thing, and the touchdowns aren't falling. Maybe there's still a chance for that to happen, but if you're looking for more of an upside play, it's definitely not Nyheim Hines. He's a floor play in PPR leagues, and if that, again, it's not really, his floor is really low right now, unfortunately. Again, Michael Pittman was out. The wide receiver core was terrible. Paris Campbell missed a big opportunity here. Alec Pierce was out. Ashton Dolan, he had a nice game, 5 for 79. If Michael Pittman's out again, Dolan can be a guy that you could go out there and maybe 12 or 14-man leagues to get as a bench wide receiver. They do play the Kansas City Chiefs this week in week 3, so they're going to need some firepower. They're going to need some bodies for a wide receiver on this offense here. So tight end for the Colts, I mean, no one really looked good. Grayson and Mo Alley-Cox combined for less than 23 yards in total, and not touching most people on the Colts right now besides Jonathan Taylor at most right now. On the Jags side of the ball, Trevor Lawrence looked nice, looked good. Definitely comes up to more of that streaming conversation for sure now. 230 yards and 2 touchdowns. Really solid performance. You got the Chargers, the Eagles, and the Texans coming up over the next 3 weeks. Definitely matchups that I like for him. So he could be someone if you're looking for a change at QB. Trevor Lawrence might actually have a really good fantasy season. So I liked him. For the running game, Travis Etienne continues to kind of disappoint. Again, I don't know if he is a must start every single week at the RB position anymore right now, especially as an RB2. I'm a little concerned. I want to see more out of him, but he's not showing us that. But he might be just a guy you hold on your bench, and hopefully that there are better things coming for Travis Etienne. James Robinson is the lead guy on this team. 23 attempts this week. I know they were ahead, but he is their lead running back still. 14 fantasy points, another good, strong RB2 in fantasy right now. Not pulling away from the targets. I wish they were there, but they're not there. But he's performing well enough that he's a nice low-end RB2 in fantasy. Good matchups coming down the road for him as well. Wide receivers, Christian Kirk is making the most of him being at one point the highest paid wide receiver, 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. He is a pretty nice locked and loaded wide receiver 2 in fantasy. He's getting the targets. He's seeing the work in the red zone. There should be no reason Christian Kirk isn't in your lineups every single week for now until something changes. Other wide receivers, I mean, no one really stepped up. Marvin Jones and Zay Jones had bad days. The tight end position here, I had Evan Ingram as a nice sleeper tight end this week. He hit 7 catches for 46 yards. Again, more of a streaming tight end option here. If you had David Njoku and Evan Ingram is out there, you might want to go and switch it a little bit. The Chargers aren't really great against tight ends for next week, so he's a nice sleeper for next week as well. That's kind of the best I see on that note here. Next game, the Giants versus the Panthers. I can't believe the Giants are 2-0, 19-16 game here. Definitely a big surprise. We'll start with the Panthers this time. Baker Mayfield kind of had even worse week this week. Again, he isn't starting quarterback in a 1 QB league. Isn't somebody I really want in the 2 QB league. He's just very mediocre. He's a really mediocre quarterback for fantasy, unfortunately. Is not something I want to deal with. Christian McCaffrey, just another solid performance. He isn't exploding like you've seen him explode, but he's been pretty solid. And I think in terms of what we expected out of him, you should be pretty happy at this point that he's putting consistent fantasy production. Tough matchup next week, but 100 yards on the ground, pretty solid day. Still 9 targets over 2 games. For the wide receiver core, DJ Moore kind of rebounded, but not in the way you want. If someone is willing to buy DJ Moore now after he had a solid performance, sell off. I know he's had 6 targets in back-to-back games, but 43 yards in back-to-back games. That's it. And if he didn't get that touchdown this week, it would have been another really bad performance for DJ Moore. I'm okay to get off DJ Moore now if someone's willing to sell him. Robbie Anderson down week from that big 100-yard week, 32 yards this week. Again, I didn't really think Robbie Anderson was anything I wanted to go after in fantasy right now. And then tight ends for the Panthers just not good. Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, 13 yards combined. Leave them all on the waivers. That's the best I can say about them. For the Giants now. Kyle, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. On the Giants side of the ball, Daniel Jones, again, another mediocre performance. These are quarterbacks that are just low in QB threes or high in QB threes, low in QB twos, and super flex leagues. You're not touch them in one QB leagues. Saquon Barkley kind of had a down week. You know, he didn't have the 160-yard week, but he had 72 yards and he had 10 fantasy points. You have to be somewhat decently happy about that. He'll have better games down the road. Not worried about Saquon right now. Wide receivers, I mean, if you have Kenny Galladay, just drop him from your team. 0 targets in this game here. He should not be on anyone's roster right now until he can prove otherwise. Wide receivers, I mean, Richie James, he's put up 6 targets back-to-back weeks, 50 yards in deeper leagues. He's definitely okay pickup, not in like a 10 or 12-man league, but in deeper leagues, if you're looking for wide receiver help, he's pretty good. And by the way, guys, if I say drop somebody, it's mostly 10 and 12-man leagues. I mean, if it's a 16-man league, Kenny G might be someone you have to keep because of the way the waivers run. There's not many people out there anyway, but most of the ones I'm talking about dropping are 10 to 12-man leagues. So just so everyone knows. Again, no one else really stepped up. Sterling Shepard didn't have a good week. The tight ends, Daniel Bellinger had 1 catch for 16 yards and it was a touchdown. It was nice, but I'm not trusting that on a week-to-week basis yet. Next game, the Bucs versus the Saints. This was a pretty interesting game. Obviously, if you guys watch this game, there was a major fight. Hunter, man, hate to say that, man. Your team's falling apart. Yeah, you're a Giants fan. Yeah, hate to hear that, but I don't know. Maybe you're not talking about the Giants. I don't know. Maybe you're talking about fantasy. I don't know. I see the Giants logo, but the Giants are 2-0. So I mean, you can't beat that. So back to the Saints and the Bucs here. I mean, if you guys saw that big fight with Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore, there's a chance they could get suspended. So if you're a Mike Evans owner, just be careful of that this coming week here. But into the matchup here, Tom Brady, another bad performance. I don't want to give up on Brady just yet. I'm hoping that it's his targets not being there. But this was a question mark with the offensive line issues. Brady is 45. He's not a young sprout. You might want to go pick up somebody off of waivers if you're holding Brady in a 1 QB league right now, just to go get someone who has maybe more upside and see how it goes. He's got tough matchups where it involve him to throw the ball over the next few weeks in Green Bay and Kansas City. But we'll see. Again, he's starting to concern me. I would want to go out and have a backup plan right now, just in case, instead of waiting until it's too late. Leonard Fournette, again, decent performance. He holds the workload in this offense here. Another 20 carry game here, 65 yards. Not the best day, but he's still pretty locked in, low end RB1 in fantasy, high end RB2, however you want to play it. Wide receiver wise, again, Mike Evans had a solid day till he got ejected. Probably could have had a better day. Probably would have had a touchdown. But just keep your eyes on him. Chris Godwin, as you guys know, he's injured, so we don't know how long he's going to be out for, but obviously he's not someone you're starting right now. Russell Gage didn't really take much of an opportunity in this week in fantasy. Oh, my fantasy team. All right, Hunter, just wanted to double check. Russell Gage really failed to make an impact in a game where he was at one point the target leader in this offense here. I'm cutting him, not worrying about Russell Gage, honestly. I really thought he would take that next step, but he just hasn't in this offense here. If you're looking for something else, I'm okay cutting him, honestly. But yeah, definitely a big disappointment from Russell Gage. Julio was out this week. Hopefully he can come back. Tight ends, not touching the tight ends for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. There's just no point. Flip side of the ball, Jameis Winston. The man played with 4 fractures in his back. God bless the man. Again, down fantasy day. I mean, with 4 fractures, what can you ask for? But again, he's a streaming quarterback, but again, I'm not trusting him right now until he can put up another good performance, especially now that he has that back issue. Not really worrying about that. Alvin Kamara, hopefully he's okay and will be back next week. Definitely concerned that he missed this game, but they said he just needed a little bit more time for this game here. So Mark Ingram put up 10 for 60. Again, he might be a pickup this week here just to have, and if Alvin Kamara is to miss again, not thrilled about it. If you don't need the RB help, don't worry about it then. Let's let someone else deal with Mark Ingram for the few, maybe 1 or 2 weeks he might have a starting job for. But again, Mark Ingram is over 30 already. I'm not really looking to grab a 30-year-old running back and have him be able to start the whole season. It's just not the way it's going to work. Wide receivers, Michael Thomas, another good performance, 65 yards and a touchdown once again. Solid our wide receiver too. Jarvis Landry kind of fell back down a little bit. This is what I expected more out of Landry, 4 receptions for 25 yards. Hopefully he can kind of get somewhere in the middle there. Again, he's a low-end wide receiver 3, high-end wide receiver 4. Chris Olave, I mean, he had the targets in this game. 13 targets in this game, 80 yards. Unfortunately, he had that fumble where it really ruined his fantasy day. overall, because I think he could, if he didn't end up falling down a little bit there, he might have had a chance to get that touchdown. He would have had a big day. He's definitely someone, if you're looking to make a stash, Chris Olave is a great stash in fantasy right now, because I feel like at some point he's going to take over as the wide receiver 2 on this team and really be productive for you in fantasy. Tight ends, again, if you started Taysom Hill, if you listen to me at some point on Twitter, I told you not to start Taysom Hill. And this is what you're going to get out of Taysom Hill. He's going to have a big week in week 1, but then he's going to have many weeks where he's going to have 1 fantasy point. It isn't sustainable, isn't consistent enough for fantasy. Hunter said, my bench is very bad. Trey Lance injured, Dameon Pierce splitting snaps. Keenan Allen injured. Mooney isn't doing great. He's not, unfortunately, and Dotson is good. Yeah, so, Pierce had more of the work this week, but yeah, Trey Lance is on IR now, so he's probably done for the season, so you'll have another spot to use on somebody else. Hopefully, Keenan Allen will be fine for week 3. I wouldn't cut Mooney yet, honestly. I know I'm not going to probably talk about Sunday night, but I would give Mooney another week or 2 before I cut him, because you probably spent a top 8 round pick on him, maybe later. If you did later, then it's okay, but you probably spent an top 8 round pick on him in fantasy. So, okay, so back to the games here now. Next game here on the slate here, Washington versus the Detroit Lions here. Detroit, big surprise, 36-27 win here. Overall, was definitely a surprise, but let's start with the Commanders in this one. Carson Wentz, great performance, even though it started off pretty slow, but garbage time always helps in fantasy. Again, he's a startable quarterback right now. It's weird to say, but at the moment, he is a startable quarterback. He has a game against the Eagles next week. He's going to want to probably play as his best. So he should be someone you'd be picking up in fantasy if he's out there, because he should at least be on rosters right now. Antonio Gibson kind of came back down to earth. If he didn't score that touchdown, it would have been a bad week. If you would have sold him last week, you would have been pretty happy, but he should be an okay low-end RB2 for now in fantasy. Again, I'm not buying the week 1 performance to be a consistent thing, but it definitely should be better than this game against the Detroit Lions. That's for sure. J.D. McKissic came back to life with his receptions, 7 receptions in this game, but again, he's a PPR bench receiver. A bench running back isn't somebody I'm looking to have in my fantasy lineups right now. Wide receivers, Terry McLaurin really bounced back. 4 receptions, 75 yards. Definitely love to see that. I mean, he had worse game this week, but in terms of his efficiency, it looked better than what we saw. Especially had more targets. That's the thing. The more targets. 4 last week was a concern. 8 is where he should be at. He should be a fine wide receiver too. Jahan Dotson should be picked up in fantasy leagues. It's definitely as a stash, or even potentially as a flexible option. Another good fantasy week out of him. 5 targets in this matchup. Another touchdown. There's going to be a lot of shootouts, I think, with this Commanders team. Dotson should be on your teams at this point if he's out there. Curtis Samuel, too. I mean, 20 targets in the last 2 games, 7 receptions. He's in PPR leagues. He should be picked up for sure. I love to have him on my team. Even maybe a sell high right now, but definitely should be on your team. If he missed 2 waivers this week, definitely should be on the top priority this coming week. Tight ends, Logan Thomas, 3 catches, 37 yards and a touchdown. He's a streaming tight end. He's okay if you need a bye week replacement. That's really it with Logan Thomas. Going on the Detroit side of ball here. Where am I? There we are. Jared Goff, big day. 4 touchdowns, 250 yards. Again, I'm not buying him throwing 4 touchdowns every single week. He's a nice streaming option. That's for sure. What Hunter say here. I also started A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones getting all the touches. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but wait for the second half. I think A.J. Dillon was going to see more work in the second half here because they're up so much. Just give it a little more time. Text me, message me on Twitter at the end of the game if that doesn't happen. So back to the thing I said, Jared Goff isn't putting up 34 fantasy points every single week. It's just not consistent enough for him to do so. But I said he would have a much better season. Him finishing as a top 18 fantasy quarterback isn't out of the question. He's a QB2 in fantasy right now. DeAndre Swift, people were concerned about the injury. He put up a good fantasy day that made you forget about that. But don't forget, he only had 10 touches in this game. So he was limited to some extent here. He should be fine. Hopefully this injury isn't a long-term thing. But if you're concerned, maybe sell high on him right now. You have to really want to break the bank if you really want to sell him right now. So Jamal Williams, his backup, another 12 carry game here, 53 yards. Again, he's a nice bench running back for your fantasy teams. A good insurance policy to DeAndre Swift right now. Amon-Ra St. Brown, man, I wanted as many St. Brown shares as I could get this offseason here. I'm mad I didn't get more. 9 receptions, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. He even had a 50-some yard run on the ground at some point in this game here. he's a locked-in high-end wide receiver too right now in fantasy. He is killing it. Like I said, Jared Goff loves to throw short, loves the slot receivers. He just fumbled. I missed that. I apologize. My TV's on mute, so I'm not looking at the TV right now. I apologize about that, Hunter. But St. Brown is a locked and loaded wide receiver too in fantasy right now. Like I said, Jared Goff loves to throw short, loves to throw to his slot receivers. St. Brown is both those things. He should be in line for a fantastic season. I wouldn't sell high on him. I want to keep St. Brown for the year because he's going to be putting up a really good season. DJ Shark, 0 for 4 for the day. Again, he could be a bench wide receiver. You could be on your waivers, whatever you want to do with him. He isn't. I don't think it's consistent enough for the way he plays his game, and it's more downfield. Jared Goff isn't much of a downfield quarterback, so that's the way I feel about that. Josh Reynolds had a touchdown. Not worried about Josh Reynolds. TJ Hawkinson, slightly concerned here. He's getting the target share, but 64 yards over 2 games. It's not really a high-end top 6 tight end. It's more of a borderline tight end 1 right now at best. Just keep monitoring on that. If you could somehow still use him as a trade piece to get another type of tight end right now, I would want to go that route right now. TJ Hawkinson is starting to concern me. To Express Bless said, do you think the Steelers should bench Trubisky and put in Kenny Pickett? I mean, I would maybe give him one more week. I know the Steelers said they want to keep Pickett on the bench all season. Maybe give him one more week, Trubisky, to let him try one more time. It may take a few games to really get this offense. But if after that, why not throw Kenny Pickett in there? He had looked decent at times in the preseason. Let the young quarterback get his feet wet. It's the Steelers. I don't think they're going to compete in for anything right now. Let Kenny Pickett command this team. I think he could better open up this offense than Trubisky can. But fortunately, I'm not Mike Tomlin. So, but that is the end of that game there. On to the next one. 49ers in Seattle. 49ers handled the Seattle Seahawks. But again, the 49ers lost a major news piece. As I mentioned before, Trey Lance out for the season. Ankle injury. It's definitely going to change the way the offense is slightly a bit, but it might be for the best, to be honest, because I wasn't a big Trey Lance fan to begin with. I thought the accuracy wasn't there. I thought the offense would run through him, which it did for the first 2 games, so first game and a half here. And I think with Jimmy G, you're not going to get the explosive big play games, but you're going to get more targets to the wide receivers and less, running with Jimmy G. He ran in for a touchdown. Yeah, it was at the 1 yard line. It is what it is with that. But you're going to get the running game actually being able to be used in the goal line and in the red zone more often than letting Trey Lance run it in that situation. I think Debo and Brandon Ayuk are going to continue to be solid wide receiver 2s. Debo has been having a down season, but we'll get to him. But Jimmy G is definitely a streamable option in fantasy. At 18 fantasy points in this game. He's a streamable guy, isn't a must pick up or anything going into your waivers. Jeff Wilson, solid game, 84 yards on the day, 2 catches. Again, he's your starting running back right now until total otherwise. He's a nice low-end RB2, high-end RB3 right now in fantasy. Terrell Davis Price, he actually also could be a sell high, honestly. I mentioned this multiple times that Jeff Wilson does get the starting role and does perform very well at times over his career. We've seen it. But he also somehow at some point gets hurt. So it might be a good time to sell high after a good performance out of him. Terrell Davis Price, he was the next man up. 14 carries, 33 yards. Definitely a disappointment. But the running backs in Terrell Davis Price and Jordan Mason might be needed to be picked up now before it's too late, before something does happen to Jeff Wilson. You might want to pick these guys up now if you have a room on your bench for him. Deebo Samuels, he didn't have a big day, but he had almost 100 all-purpose yards on the day, another 12-point fantasy day. Not concerned, but I don't think he is a wide receiver 1 right now in fantasy. He's a solid, strong wide receiver 2, as long as he keeps up this rushing floor. Half his receiving yards or yards in general, all-purpose yards, he's got 100 yards on the ground. He only has 58 with receiving right now. So it's a little concern of that nature, but if Deebo's continue to be used this way, especially without Trey Lance he should be pretty fine. Definitely it was a crazy ending. Oh, I was thrilled. I'm a Dolphins fan, so I was loving life right there. It was crazy ending. Miami was a team that usually doesn't come back from being down by so much, so the fact that they did was crazy. Definitely a fun game to watch. There's a lot of ones that like this week. And we'll talk about another one in a few minutes here. So back to Deebo Samuel. So he was doing okay. Like I said, he's doing okay this year, but I'm slightly concerned that it's just going to continue to be a rushing game from him and not the receiving game that we all thought he was as a wide receiver would be. So just keep your eyes on that. I don't know if you want to get out of him, out under him now. I don't have any Debo shares because I wasn't concerned about how the running game would work with him. Eventually, if you keep running the ball, he might get hurt. So just throwing that out there. If someone wants to take Debo off your hands, I wouldn't hate it. Brandon Ayuk, good day, 5 for 63 yards. He should be fine as a wide receiver 3 in fantasy with Jimmy G back there now. No one else really stepped up. George Kittle, hopefully he's coming back next week here. I don't want to touch anyone outside of George Kittle in the tight end room. So for the Seattle side of the ball, Geno Smith came back down to earth, 197 yards and a pick. Expect that from Geno Smith. Don't expect the week 1 performance out of him weekly. Rashad Penny, definitely a big down week, just 6 for 15 yards on the day here. And Kenneth Walker, 4 for 10. The run game just did not look good. And the fact that they were so far behind, they probably had to throw the ball more. And I don't really think either one of these guys are being used in the passing game all that much. I mean, Travis Homer had the 4 catches for 33 yards. Kenneth Walker had 3 targets in this game, but again, for 5 yards. Again, both these guys for now are wide RB3s in my books until they can prove who is the real starter and if someone can actually be efficient. And Penny was efficient week 1, but this was a bad efficiency. Next week's a good matchup, so it might be a sleeper option for Rashad Penny and maybe even a deep sleeper option for Kenneth Walker right now in fantasy. Hunter said, only people who did good on my team are Najee, Carlson, and Waddle. Well, that's for sure. Definitely Waddle. Love that. But yeah, the running backs for the Seattle Seahawks isn't an area that I'm trying to have on my team if I can right now. For the wide receivers, sell Tyler Lockett. If someone wants to buy the 107-yard game, please go buy it. He might have another good game next week. So if you want to hold on for one more week and hopefully he has another good performance next week, because I think A.J. Terrell got hurt from the Falcons secondary. He's another guy that I'm looking to sell high. I don't think that's sustainable for him to put on week-to-week basis. I think it's going to fluctuate. For DK Metcalf, I'm buying low on DK Metcalf right now. After back-to-back games of under 40 yards, fantasy owners are probably almost like fed up with him at this point. I think he will still be able to bounce up. I think the talent with DK Metcalf will still be able to bounce back. I'm not concerned. Again, it sucks to see what he's doing early on, but I think there's still a chance for him to really break through in this offense here, even though it's a really bad offense. Tight ends, I mean, if you have Noah Fant on your team, just get rid of him at this point. Just 2 targets for 11 yards. You might not even drafted him, but just had to throw him out there. Next game on the slate here, the Rams and the Falcons. This was an interesting game because the Falcons almost came back and won this game. I was not expecting that to happen here, but it almost went that way. So we'll start with the Rams here. Matthew Stafford bounced back, almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, like I mentioned. Good day out of him. He should be fine as a QB1. The running game, a little different now. Cam Akers actually came alive, 15 for 44 and 2 catches for 18 yards. He definitely carried Darrell Henderson, who I think at some point early on in this game did get banged up, but he had the touchdown, which kind of saved his fantasy day if people did start him. Again, these guys are going to probably split work for most of the season here, unless one of them really does break out in this offense here. I'm not really saying either one of them is at RB2 right now. They're probably both RB3s until one of them can prove that they're the main starter or is just showing more efficiency. Both under 3 yards. I mean, Cam Akers under 3 yards to carry. Henderson did it better, but he's someone who gets banged up as well. So sell high on their performances and somebody thinks, oh, well, Cam Akers is going to come back, watch. Or Darrell Henderson is going to be the lead guy now. I'm selling the book on both of those right now if someone wants to buy the decent performance out of either one of them right now. Cooper Kupp did what Cooper Kupp does, 100 yards and a touchdown, 2 touchdowns actually on 11 receptions, sorry. Tired, guys. Allen Robinson did bounce back, 4 catches, 53 yards and a touchdown. That's what you can kind of expect out of him, I think, in most weeks. But if he does start performing really well, look to sell high because I really do believe this team brings back Odell Beckham at some point this coming season. Whether it's, after week 10 or whatever it is, there's a good chance that he does. And if that happens, that could really mess things up for Allen Robinson. But he's got a matchup next week that should be favorable for what he's able to do. But good performance from him right now. Tight ends, Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee is actually an underrated tight end right now. I think you guys have like David Njoku or Cole Komet or Alberto or Irv Smith. If you went with one of those guys, I think you might want to consider dropping them and going after Tyler Higbee, or at least going to pick up Tyler Higbee right now. I mean, he's got 20 targets over the last 2 games now, 71 yards this week. He's performed at a solid low end tight end one, and he's been consistent about it. He should be able to continue to use that all season. This is going to be a pass happy team still. So Tyler Higbee is an interesting option. Hunter said, "Do you think Keenan Allen will play in week 3?" I hope he does. Uh, it didn't look like he was ready to play in week 2. And again, it was a shortened week. I think he would have probably been a game time decision had they played on Sunday and not Thursday. And maybe it's still been out, but I think with another extra week rest here, they should be fine. So um, can't say for sure, but I'm hopeful, and it seems like he should be. We'll have to wait and see as the practice reports come out on Wednesday, Thursday. So hopefully he is good to go. We're getting close to the end here, guys. Let's go back to the Falcons now for their breakdown here. And Marcus Mariota, another solid, QB performance day. That high-end RB QB2 right now in fantasy. He didn't have the rushing day, but he threw up 2 touchdowns for this week. I think that's what you can expect out of him. As long as he keeps that rushing up, he should be fine for fantasy. But he isn't somebody you're really starting right now. But he's a good backup play if you need someone. Cordell Patterson came back down to earth. I don't think the 120-yard game is sustainable for us in fantasy. If you would have sold him off last week, that would have been great. I think he can flirt with a RB2, a low-end RB2 play most weeks. But again, this was a tough matchup against the Rams, who were angry about week 1. So he kind of just fell for it. Seattle, they do play the Seattle Seahawks next week. Should be a better matchup for him. Tyler Algier, 10 for 30, might be someone you want to pick up off waivers this week because Damien Williams is now on IR for a while now. So Tyler Algier is going to be the next man up in this offense, and he only had rushing game. He didn't have anything in the passing game, which is disappointing, but he should be a target in your week 3 waivers right now. Drake London, just another solid, great performance from this rookie wide receiver. 8 catches, 86 yards, and a touchdown. You should be really happy if you drafted London. He should be pretty solid all season long. No one else did anything on this team outside of Drake London really this week. Even Kyle Pitts, another under 20-yard performance day. And I'm really concerned about what's going on with Kyle Pitts right now. It's not dire yet. Give him a few more weeks in this offense here. I'm really hoping things kind of turn around for him. You draft him as high as you did. You can't give up on him yet. You got to let him play it out. They're going to have this is a bad team, guys. He's a bad team. He's a part of a bad team. Hopefully he can kind of bounce back from this. I'm not out on Kyle Pitts just yet. So Hunter said, do you think this week is just a bad week for Dalton Schultz, or do you think Cooper Rush did not like him? If I'm not mistaken, he did get hurt in this game, Hunter. I believe he did get hurt in this game. And he got hurt enough for them to say it wasn't anything to do with his ACL or anything like that. So he might have not had a bad week per se, even though he did. He might have got hurt, and that might have been why he didn't really perform to that nature. I haven't heard more about his injury yet, but I heard he did get banged up in this game here. So we'll have to wait and see in the next couple of days. But hopefully he should be fine. Hopefully, if he's healthy. I mean, the Cowboys use their tight ends consistently throughout as long as I've known fantasy, and I don't see why he shouldn't. He should be still starting him on a week-to-week basis. He's still a tight end one because he's part of this kind of team here who uses their tight ends. But again, I think he did get banged up in this game. I'm like 100% sure on that, so that's why he kind of had that bad week. Like I said, Kyle Pitts, don't give up on him just yet. He should be fine. Just you're going through some bad plays right now with him. On to the next one here. The Denver Broncos and the Houston Texans. This was a really bad game. I mean, if you guys watch this game, the Denver offense got booed hard in this game. It was pretty bad. Russ does not look good. I don't know if I want to start Russ on a week-to-week basis right now, to be honest. They have a tough matchup against the 49ers. Russ has always been so-so on the 49ers. I don't know if Russ is a QB1 at this exact moment. Yeah, this was a bad day. And then he loses Jerry Jeudy too. Hopefully that's not a serious thing. I don't know if Russ is a QB1 right now. He's not looked sharp in either game so far this coming season. And he had 2 matchups that were favorable to him too. So if you have Russell Wilson, look for a backup plan now and have someone else on your bench just in case, because I don't know if I can trust Russell right now personally. Javonte Williams, 15 for 75 on the day. Good fantasy day. Again, he's going to split time with Melvin Gordon. He's not going to hit that QB1. He's not going to hit that RB1 status unless Melvin Gordon gets hurt. He's a solid mid-range RB2 right now in fantasy. Melvin Gordon, 10 for 47. Again, he's a low-end RB3. Would have a nice handcuff role for him right now in fantasy. Courtland Sutton, big day for Courtland Sutton. 7 for 120. This is what I've been expecting out of Courtland Sutton with Russell Wilson, something that DK Metcalf used to do with him. Courtland Sutton is a nice high-end wide receiver too. Jerry Jeudy, definitely not a great day. Just one catch, 11 yards. The shoulder injury he did sustain in this game here. He left in the early first quarter and did not come back, so we'll have to see if it was really that bad. I'm sure we'll know more about it tomorrow with an MRI, so keep your eyes on him. No one else really did good on the receiving core there. Alberto, 2 targets in a game where especially Jerry Jeudy left. He's definitely not I don't know if he's going to be a breakout option that many people thought, but he's definitely at best a bench tight end and maybe be cuttable if you're looking for an upgrade at tight end if you don't trust this. I don't trust it that much. Houston, Davis Mills thought I would have a better day. Pretty down day for Davis Mills here overall. 177 yards. Again, not a quarterback you're really using. Dameon Pierce did have 15 carries in the game, and he pretty much led the way in carries. So if you were to buy low on Dameon Pierce before this week, you should be pretty happy that he isn't going to be a PPR guy, but he's going to be a guy in half-point PPR that is a low-end RB2 in fantasy on a bad team. 69 yards, not a bad day for him overall, but not something that should be a star potential for right now in fantasy. Rex Burkhead, again, no carries, just two receptions for 9 yards. If you pick them up and you spent big, I'm sorry, probably shouldn't have done that, but again, he's going to be there passing downs back until Dameon Pierce takes that over if he does. Brandon Cooks down day, 4 for 54 yards. He should bounce back. Pretty solid wide receiver too. Nico Collins, 4 for 58. I'm hoping that continues to be a mini breakout for him, but I'm not buying it until I can see it being more consistent for him in fantasy. Again, week 1 was just 2 for 26, 4 for 58 this week. Hopefully he can kind of do better or be more consistent moving forward. Tight ends, O.J. Howard did not have 2 touchdowns again. So if you believed in O.J. Howard having 2 touchdowns, once again, he had 1 catch for 7 yards. Bevan Jordan had 2 catches for 3 yards, not touching these tight ends whatsoever. 2 more games here, guys. The Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders here, guys. So let's see what we got here for this matchup here. So Derek Carr, solid performance, much better than in week 1, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Did not have 3 interceptions, no turnovers in this game for him, which was great. So he had a really solid performance. Josh Jacobs is the main running back for the Las Vegas Raiders. Couldn't think of the name. Las Vegas Raiders, 19 carries, 69 yards. He doesn't have a PPR floor. He's more of a low-end RB2 in fantasy as well. But he has this workload in this offense here. Should be a fine RB2 in fantasy. No one else really did good in the running game. Devontae Adams had a really down week, though thankfully that he had another touchdown. So he saved his fantasy day a little bit there. He should bounce back, be fine. Hunter Renfrow had 10 targets in this game, though he fumbled, a costly fumble in this game. Really good to watch this game here. 7 for 58. He's an wide receiver 3 in fantasy. Matt Collins in deeper leagues, 5 for 66. I really liked him a little bit there. Again, not sustainable probably, but in deeper leagues might be a deep sleeper. And Darren Waller, another solid day, 6 for 50 and a touchdown. Good top 5 fantasy tight end right now. The Arizona Cardinals now. Let's see where the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, man. Kyler Murray put the team on his back in this game here. Another good fantasy day out of him. 277 yards, 1 touchdown on the ground, 28 yards, 2 2-point conversions. Fantastic. James Conner's 7 for 25. Really down day for James Conner. He did get banged up in this game with an ankle injury. Hopefully it isn't severe. Just keep your eyes on it. But Darrell Williams might be the pickup. He had 8 carries after that, 59 yards and a touchdown. He clearly is the runnings down back in this offense here, while it looked like Ito Benjamin, even though he had 8 carries too, is probably more the passing downs back. They're likely split role if James Conner were to be out for a certain period of time, but both guys will likely be pickups in waiver wires this week unless James Conner comes out fine Monday morning. Hollywood Brown, 6 for 68. Another just mediocre day out of him. I'm kind of expecting more out of him. He's definitely not going to be someone that I'm going to want to probably start once DeAndre Hopkins comes back. AJ Green, 16 yards, not great. Rondell Moore's out again. Greg Dortch, another solid performance, 55 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown. Again, in 12-man leagues, he's a good bench guy to pick up right now because he's got another 4 weeks without DeAndre Hopkins and continues to be the more consistent option in this Cardinals offense. Zach Ertz, another great day, 8 for 75. Good tight end 1 in fantasy, top probably 8 tight end in fantasy right now. And we're getting close to the end here. I'm tired of talking so much. I should probably bring somebody on this one time, but I figured it'd be quicker if I did it, but maybe it's not. All right, so this is the Cincinnati Bengals here, guys. Joe Burrow, not a great day from Joe Burrow once again. 199 yards and a touchdown. Definitely a very mediocre day. Again, another guy that I'm looking to find a backup just to have just in case. Joe Mixon, 19 for 57 yards, and then 26 yards in the air. Kind of a bad day. At some point, I think he'd get banged up, I heard, but he should be fine. He played most into the fourth quarter anyway, so I wouldn't be concerned about that. He should bounce back and be fine. He's got the Jets next week. Ja'Marr Chase, again, down day, 5 for 54. He can't be an elite wide receiver every week, guys, but he's got the Jets next week. He should bounce back. T. Higgins had the good day, 6 for 71 and a touchdown. Should be a good, again, Ja'Marr Chase is a wide receiver 1. T. Higgins, a high-end wide receiver 2. Maybe a low-end wide receiver 1, depending how you want to think about it. Tyler Boyd, not a great day, but he had a 2-point conversion at some point in this game. That's about it. Tight ends, Hayden Hurst in deeper leagues, definitely a decent tight end. I mean, another 5 catches in this game, but 24 yards. But he's seeing the target share in this offense. So in deeper leagues, he's not a bad play. For the Cowboys, finally, Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush, I mean, he had an okay day. I mean, better than I think a lot of people thought he would. 235 yards and a touchdown. Again, it's okay. Nothing more about him. Zeke Elliott, another bad performance from Zeke. I don't know if Zeke's definitely not a starting tight end right now in fantasy. You can't trust him with another 50-yard game, especially with no Dak Prescott. He's a bench wide receiver, a bench running back right now in fantasy. I'm not starting Zeke unless I'm forced to. Tony Pollard had a better day, 4 catches for 55 yards, and he had the touchdowns, and he had almost 100 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. We'll see how sustainable that is. I'm not going to base it off one performance because if you look at week 1, it was really bad, and week 2 was really good. Let's see, give him another week or 2 more before you trust either one of these guys, honestly, in fantasy. CeeDee Lamb, he's getting the targets, but 75 yards, not bad. And the 1 catch, I believe it was like another 15 yards, came at the end of the game, basically, before they kicked that field goal. Again, he's a wide receiver 2 in fantasy. It might drop as we go through, but I'm not thrilled to start him, but he's still a wide receiver 2, not a wide receiver 1 anymore. And again, Dalton Schultz, Noah Brown had a good day. He might be worth the pickup, 5 for 91 and a touchdown. He's got 150 yards over 2 games, and most of that, I think, came with Cooper Rush anyway. So that chemistry is there, so he might be worth a pickup in that sense. And I said before, Dalton Schultz, just 2 for 18. He did get kind of banged up in this game, so we'll see if that's sustainable or not, if he gets hurt or it's something that's going to be long-term. Jake Ferguson might be an option at that point if you're looking for a tight end, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, definitely a bad week for him. But that's going to wrap up my show tonight, guys. I appreciate you guys for all listening in. This was much longer than I expected, but hopefully I can do it much quicker next time around. But I thank you all for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in for the questions. I'm hoping to do this again every Sunday night around 9:30, 10, and give you guys a little recap of week 1. So thanks for listening, guys. Tune in until tomorrow night, Fantasy Coaches on a waiver wire show, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll go through all of our waiver wires for the week 3 matchups coming up.